The red emergency light hit the bridge floor as the main power lines split. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. Would you have stayed inside that room because she did not run? War Master Kale Thrak charged with his full weight, his heavy crimson chest plates cutting through the dark corridor. His face scales were pulled back in a wild roar and his scent glands filled the air with the sharp, bitter smell of ozone-tracking vapor. The human did not try to back away. Envoy Iris Chen simply dropped her weight, sliding low beneath his sweeping claw strike. Her small hands came up fast, locking behind his thick neck in a tight, steady hold. For 25 seconds, the only sound on the command deck was the wet, whistling gasp of the War Master's throat sacs collapsing under the pressure. The 300-pound warlord went limp, his massive frame hitting the metal console like a dead engine while the remaining bridge crew watched in absolute terror. 6 hours before the bridge went dark, the heavy underdeck of the obsidian shard rumbled with the sound of old victory songs. The Cavalesh Hegemony had spent 3 centuries winning wars by being the loudest force in the Orion zone. Our strategy was built on heavy metal walls and sonic horns that could break a soldier's inner ear from 2 miles away. We had always believed that the things that made the most noise held the most power. Specialist Zephyrvex adjusted his digital desk screens inside the logistics hub, his 3 optical slits twitching as the heavy iron door of the subdeck 4 interrogation vault slid open. 6 Vanguard guards marched inside, their heavy boots making the deck plates ring. Between them walked Iris Chen. She wore a thin gray tunic with no armor plates, no uniform markings, and no visible weapons. She looked small against the 8-foot guards, almost fragile. Her pulse rate showed on Vex's corner screen as a flat, steady green circle. It was sitting at 62 beats per minute. The number did not jump when the heavy vault door slammed shut behind her, sealing the room with a wet, heavy click. The vault was a 30-foot box lined with thick acoustic plates. These walls were built to reflect and multiply every sound, turning a simple shout into a physical blow that could knock a grown man to his knees. Security Chief Grath stood near the center, his gray skin smelling of sulfur and military grease. He clicked his secondary jaws together, a sharp thump-click sound that echoed 4 times against the high ceiling. "The human government calls you an envoy," Grath boomed, his voice hitting 90 decibels. The sound made the water cups on the side table shake. "But you are in our deep territory now. Our laws say those who cannot project force do not have a voice. You will sign the system trade rights over to the hegemony before the 3rd moon sets." Iris Chen did not speak. She sat down in the heavy steel interrogation chair at the center of the room. Her movements were smooth, showing no sign of the sudden muscle jerks that usually happen when a soft-skinned creature faces a predator. Vex watched her wrists on the video feed. They were bound tight by a braided carbon wire weave, a standard restraint designed to tighten its grip if the prisoner tried to shake or twist their hands. She did not fight the wire. Instead, she rested her arms flat against the cold metal tables, looking at Grath with calm, gray eyes. Sentry Drax stepped forward, his secondary mandibles twitching with excitement. He unhooked a long, yellow shock prod from his belt link. The tip of the metal rod hummed with blue sparks that threw long, moving shadows across the acoustic wall plates. "They are soft," Drax grunted, his voice low and raspy. "They do not even have shells to protect their core organs." "One hit will make her speak." Vex tapped his secondary claw against his display screen to clear a smudge of carbon dust before the data updated. A small, old planetary file had just finished loading from the deep archives. It was a tactical report from a small scout ship that had visited the human homeworld 2 cycles ago. Vex's optical slits narrowed as he read the first lines of the text. The data did not talk about human weapons or starships. It talked about their legs, their skin, and how they ran. "Wait," Vex muttered into his headset, his voice cutting into the vault's main audio loop. "Chief Grath, look at her breathing rate. It has not changed since she entered the subdeck. The file says their ancestors did not hunt with traps or loud roars, they walked." Grath did not listen. He gave a short wave with his upper hand. Drax took a long step forward, raising the humming shock prod high above his head to strike. The human did not flinch. She did not try to pull her body away from the blue sparks. Instead, she leaned into Drax's forward movement, shifting her center of gravity down toward the floor plates. With a single sharp twist of her shoulders, she caught the tip of Drax's prod with the braided carbon cords between her wrists. The wire caught the metal edge, using the guard's own momentum against him. Drax's 370-pound frame tipped forward, losing its balance entirely. He hit the iron deck with a loud, wet crash that rattled the wall plates. Before Grath could raise his sidearm, Iris slammed her heels against the base of the heavy steel interrogation chair. The thick metal legs, which Vex knew were welded deep into the subfloor frames, broke free with a sharp scream of tearing iron. She used the broken metal frame like a crowbar, swinging the heavy seat in a short, tight arc that caught the secondary response team as they flooded through the vault doors. 2 guards went down instantly, their chitin breastplates cracking under the heavy impact. Vex stared at his screen, his fingers freezing over the alarm keys. He was not looking at the fight anymore, he was looking at the tracking logs. Iris Chen had not made a single sound, no battle cry, no gasp of pain, no breath of fear. She moved with a cold, terrifying lack of effort, like a machine counting down a list of simple tasks. She stripped a neural disruptor from a falling guard's hand before his body even hit the floor plates. Security Chief Grath fired his heavy sonic pistol twice, the sound waves tearing chunks of insulation off the back wall. Iris did not look back. She used a fallen guard's thick torso as a physical shield against the energy blast, then fired a single blue disruptor shot straight into the main ventilation control panel near the ceiling. The vault went black as the primary circuits died. Vex quickly switched his display screens to thermal tracking mode, his eyes scanning the green and yellow maps of the ship's internal grid. The narrow ventilation tunnels were less than 3 feet wide, filled with spinning fan blades and hot exhaust pipes. Iris Chen was already inside them. She was crawling through the dark metal drone conduits without triggering any of the acoustic proximity sensors. She knew our systems tracked sound, so she moved only during the dead spaces between the ship's engine pulses. "She is heading toward the weapons deck," Vex shouted into the main command channel, his hands flying across his input panel. "She cleared the entire subdeck guard station in 43 seconds. Send everyone to Sector 3. A new data log flashed onto Vex's screen, updating in real time as the human moved through the ship's walls. The old file said humans could track a target across hot sand for 200 kilometers without stopping. They did not have thick armor plates because their skin was built to shed heat, allowing them to walk until their prey's heart simply burst from exhaustion. This was not a diplomat who had lost her way. This was an apex pursuit asset that had spent years learning how to neutralize non-standard environments using whatever tools she could find. Iris dropped down from a ceiling vent into the engineering sector. Technician Piero was standing near the main coolant valves, his young eyes wide with panic as the human landed 3 feet away from his station. He reached for a manual wrench, his hands shaking so hard he dropped it onto the floor grid. Iris did not strike him. She caught him by his shoulder plate, her grip surprisingly strong, and pushed him gently inside a reinforced tool storage unit. She slid the heavy iron bar across the outside door, locking him safely inside the cold room rather than clearing him out. Her actions were not driven by anger or fear. She was simply removing moving parts from her path. Vex watched her via the corridor cameras as she neared the central elevator shaft. Her gray tunic was stained with dark guard grease and her hands were steady. She was adjusting the loose carbon wire weave around her fingers, turning the restraint into a tight loop that fit perfectly across her palms. She wasn't trying to survive our ship. She was deciding how many logs I would have to type before the morning rotation. The command spire elevator whined as it rose toward the top deck. Warmaster Kael'thrak stood at the center of the bridge, his crimson carapace plates reflecting the bright lights of the navigation consoles. He had his heavy war axe unhooked, its silver blade humming with kinetic energy. "Let her come to the top," he roared, his deep voice filling the wide room. "We built an empire out of thunder. A single soft-skinned creature cannot stop a flagship by hiding in the dark." Then the bridge power grid shattered and the world turned red. The memory of her slide beneath his guard played out in Vex's mind, as he watched the Warmaster's massive body collapse onto the main console. Kael'thrak's war axe dropped from his limp hand, hitting the deck plates with a dull, heavy clatter that seemed to echo forever in the sudden quiet of the bridge. The remaining officers did not raise their weapons. They stood completely still, their arms frozen halfway to their belt holsters, their eyes fixed on the small human woman who stood over their leader. A soft electronic click sounded inside Vex's headset. It was a low, encrypted human military signal, bypassing the ship's primary security walls and locking directly into our central data core. The translation appeared on Vex's terminal in cold, gray letters. It was not a message of war. It was a standard administrative arrival notice, logged under basic orbital safety protocols. Iris Chen reached down, her fingers moving across the Warmaster's control panel with practiced ease. She did not look at the guards who were watching her. She picked up a small bottle of water from Thrak's personal desk, unscrewed the cap without making a sound, and took a long, slow drink. Her pulse on Vex's screen had dropped back to 62 beats per minute. 2 minutes later, the outer hull of the obsidian shard groaned as 3 unarmored human transport vessels locked onto our primary docking bays. There were no warning sirens from our defense systems. The automated turrets had been cut from the inside when the bridge power died. The heavy airlock doors slid open with a soft hiss, and a dozen human retrieval specialists stepped onto the deck plates. They wore simple white jumpsuits and carried small data pads. They did not shout. They did not draw kinetic weapons. They moved across the wreckage of our flagship with a terrifying, quiet calmness that felt far worse than an orbital bombardment. A tall officer with dark skin and a neat uniform walked up to Vex's log station, his shoes clicking softly against the metal grid floor. Specialist Zephyr Vex, the officer said, his voice quiet and conversational. He checked his data pad without looking up. I am Commander Okonkwo. We are here to collect our envoy and sign the original treaty terms. You will find the files are already loaded into your system. Vex did not answer. His 3 optical slits tracked the human teams as they picked up the broken pieces of our Vanguard armor, cataloging the damage with the detached efficiency of factory workers. The High Command of the Cavalesh Hegemony was already sending full territorial concessions through the subspace links, signing away 3 star systems before the human support cruisers could even finish their orbital drift. Iris Chen walked toward the open airlock, her steps light and silent against the heavy metal floorboards. She did not look back at the bridge, nor at the broken warlord who was still gasping for air against the main terminal. The frayed loop of tensile carbon wire lay flat on Vex's clean logistics desk. The black strands were stained with grease, their braided edges torn and split from the rough steel welds of the interrogation room. Vex picked up the wire, his fingers feeling the cold, stiff texture of the weave. The fleet would change its training manuals before the next solar cycle, deleting every acoustic weapon and warhorn from the armory files. We used to think the stars belonged to the ones who roared loudest. Now we know the deep space belongs to the ones who wait for the echo to die.